longest task of teaching you something about attachment, which the four of us who are presenting all agree that normally we take a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days to train. So we give you something, and then Karla and Ronda are able to stay afterwards. So if you have questions, you are most welcome to stick around with them and ask your questions. There will be some question and answer during our session together, but for more questions and maybe more personal questions, you can also come and ask them afterwards. Then also they might come in and take pictures, and if you don't want your picture to be taken, just put your hand up and they will not take your personal picture. If you think, no, I don't want to be on a website or whatever, just if you see a photographer come in, go like this and they will not take your picture. Okay? And the handouts on the table, you can take one, and once we're done, you can take 2 or 3 or 4 if you like them, because we don't really want to take them with us. We know, but you can take them and you can spread them among your people, your ministry, whatever. So feel free. Then I wrote a little manual that is not free. I sell it for $5 or the equivalent in baht on attachment. If you want to know more, come and see me afterwards, and you can get one. And if they are sold out, then we might find another way. I think that's all that I wanted to say. And so let me quickly introduce all the speakers of this panel session. I need to here. This is Ronda from the US, and you can see she's a psychologist, social worker, trainer, consultant, so you can come and consult with her afterwards. Then this is Karla Williams, author, speaker, global child advocate, and all are adoptive moms besides me. And this is Sue Austen from Zimbabwe, and I'm Barbara Ruegger from Switzerland, and all of us, we also work internationally, we travel, we teach internationally, which we're doing today here as well. So now we want to start and give you a little example from the family, and later each one of us will come back to the example and share more about it. So we want to give you some principles. We want to teach you a bit about attachment, and then also give you some time for question and answers. Okay, Rhonda, I think you're starting.
We have 2 biological children and 1 adopted son that we adopted at age 9, who's now 26. I have 6 grandkids also. We have 6 grandchildren. So, but the quick example I wanted to give you of the difference in raising biological children versus adoptive children that to me exemplifies a lot of the issues is when there's a bad dream at night. It was very typical for our daughter and our son that are biological to come running to our room. Sometimes they'd wake us up, jump, because our son would just jump in the bed if he had a nightmare or a bad dream, and we could comfort him and our daughter, and they'd go back to sleep. With our adopted son, no matter how much we begged him to please come and wake us up, he would never do it. He would tell us about his bad dreams in the morning, but he never would come for 2 reasons, he said. One is he didn't want to bother us, and we couldn't convince him that this was normal for us to be bothered for this. That's what we wanted. That was our heart. But also that he was just too terrified to leave his room. So both of those issues. And he was an older child, so it was appropriate for him to sleep in his room alone. But just to exemplify a simple example.
Thank you. That was a great example. I'm trying to give you examples just to so that you can identify maybe some of the children in your home or the children that you work with that may have some of these same issues. And one of the examples that I wanted to give really quickly, I am the mom of 6 adopted children, two sibling groups of 3. And every possible trauma is represented in my household. Every possible behavior as a result of trauma is represented in my household. And one of the things I wanted to point out that is a perfect example of attachment, before and after attachment, would be my youngest daughter, who came to us at the age of 6, and we were her 6th home. So you can imagine that a lot of people had made a lot of promises to her that they did not keep. And so one of the things that she did for the first year of living with us was sleep with her suitcase next to her bed. She was used to people coming and needing to leave quickly. And at the age of 6, she had decided that she was always going to be ready to leave. And no matter how much we told her that this was her forever home, even if the adoption was final after the 6-month waiting period, she still slept with it. And a year later, she asked me to come to her room and to put her suitcase in the basement. And that was a major, major deal, because that meant I trust that you're going to keep your word even though everybody else hasn't. So that's kind of an idea of not being attached, and then it taking time based on the kid actually attaching.
I remember that story from when you told it in Zimbabwe. My example has to do with transitions. That's what I'm going to speak on a little bit later. One of our little guys, when we moved him into a new school situation, long story, but the result and the example that I want to give you would be me getting a phone call from the teacher saying, you need to come, and you need to come quickly, because he's running down a main highway street and his shoes are off, and we're really afraid that he's going to run into the traffic and get hurt. Because that going into a new environment, going into a new space was so overwhelming for him, and it just completely flipped him out, and he didn't know how to deal with that. He didn't know how to manage himself in that situation. And his fear triggers were set off, and he would literally run. He was a flight guy, fight, flight, freeze. He was a flight guy, so he would run away from the thing that he felt threatened by. Now, I land them at school, and he waves goodbye. See you later, Mom. And he spends the day in school, and I pick him up at the end of the day. But transitions are hard for children who don't have healthy attachment.
Maybe I can share a quick example too about transition. My sister was a or still is a foster mother, and one of her foster kids, she finished school, and in Switzerland we do apprenticeships. So we go to a place where we learn a skill, and it was her time to finish school and to go and learn a skill, and it was a very safe place. It was a place for children with some issues, with mental issues, also psychological issues. It was a very safe place. She knew where she was going. She had been there for a week. She liked it, but still, it was a huge transition. And she acted out. But what really did strike me was that she started to complain that she wasn't seeing well, and it was obvious. And she drove her bicycle off the bicycle path because she wasn't seeing well. And then she went to the eye doctor, and they checked her eyes, and they could tell that something was wrong, but somehow it just didn't match up with a sickness. They said, yeah, we see this, we see that, but it's not really a sickness. And then they said, it must be psychologically. And then she started to work there. And in a short time, her eyesight was normal again. And that really was like, wow, transitions can even affect us physically. Okay, I give you a little bit of theory, which is very important to understand more about attachment. What is it, and why is it so important? maybe you know, maybe you don't know yet. So I want to share about the little kids. I want to share about the healthy attachment, mainly. How is it formed? And when a little baby is born into a healthy family, little kids have a lot of needs. Little kids they cannot do anything. They're helpless. They need their mummies and daddies to care for them. And what they do is they cry. They have no other way because they cannot get up and come and say, hey, mommy, I want that, I need that. The only thing they can do is cry. So they will cry, and the mother will hear the cry, will go, and will answer to the need of the child. And that might be hunger, that might be my nappies are full, it feels uncomfortable. That might be, I am bored, I have been sleeping and I'm bored, I need some company. Different needs, but mothers will answer those needs. So from the action the child takes, the crying, that's an action the child takes. There will be a reaction by the mother, which will lead to the child being happy. Gratification, satisfaction. My mommy knows what I need. She gives me what I need. And this is happening. I mean, all of us, all of you who had little kids, worked with little kids, we know that this is happening, not just once a day, but lots of times. And every time the mother comes, every time the mother is reacting and is meeting the need of the child learns, I can trust my mother, my father, I can trust them. They know what I need. And so the child learns this basic trust. What if the child cries and nobody comes? Because the child grows up in an orphanage. Because the child grows up with parents who are drug addicts and most of the time are not really there because they're drugged. Eventually these kids are stopping to cry because they cry and realize it's not helping. So why should I cry? And the child experiences to be helpless. All I can do is to cry, is crying, and it doesn't change anything. I'm helpless. And also it makes the child very angry. So there is anger stored into the child every time this is happening. So this is basically what is happening throughout the first year. And I have two pictures that I think that really illustrate to us how that looks. This bridge is very old, has been there for a long time, and still it's very solid. And that's what basic trust is. It's like a very solid bridge that makes it easy for us to come and meet somebody else. At this conference, I'm going to meet so many new people because I trust them. And so basic trust that the child learns helps him to later in life go to other people and meet them in a trustful relationship because it has learned my parents, my family are trustworthy. I can go there. And so it helps them to continue to make good relationships with others and to trust others. Now this bridge, I don't know if you would like to cross it. Would you? Only in the extreme emergency would we try to cross this bridge. You know, if you're about to die, you probably try to cross. And that's what this mistrust is in children. They don't want to enter relationships. They're afraid. I cannot trust. We heard the trust story with the suitcase. I cannot trust. I don't want to enter any other relationship because I cannot trust. So that's the first year cycle of a child learning to trust, learning to attach or not to trust and not to attach. But it doesn't stop there. There is a second year cycle, and that's a year when the children are growing. They have learned many things. They can walk. They learn to talk now, second, third year. They can express themselves. And we all know that these kids can express themselves very well. And they can tell us what they want or don't want. And what they need now is that we still meet their needs, but not all their wants. But that as a good parent, we are able to say, no, that's not appropriate. No, you cannot have that. Or not now, later. And the child learns to accept it. And they learn, oh, I'm not dying. I'm not dying if I'm not getting the chocolate now that I want, but I need to eat the vegetables that we have for lunch. But mommy said I can have a chocolate after the vegetables. I survive. I'm frustrated, but it's okay. I can be frustrated, but I can handle it. And that leads children into a growing autonomy. They're learning to be independent from their mothers. Oh, mommy is a person, I'm a person, we disagree, but mommy still loves me. Our disagreement doesn't make mommy not to love me. She still does. But what happens if we always say, yes, 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 yes? And I see that happening so often. It has a lot to do, I think, with our society, changing societies. Many parents both work. They only meet in the evening. And everybody is tired. They just want to be a happy family. And the child, what makes the child happy? If I say yes. Child wants chocolate? Yes, yes. The child wants this, that? Yes, yes. And it doesn't help the child to really grow and learn, I can live without things. I don't need to have everything. But also, I can trust my parents that they know what I need, that they know what is good for me. Because a child who has parents who always say yes, yes, a child who can manipulate. Let me give you an example. A friend told me that she was overhearing her 3-year-old and with their 4-year-old son, and the 4-year-old boy, not her son, another family son, the 4-year-old boy said to her little daughter, if I want something, I cry and then I get it. And I know the family and I know it's true and I have tried to tell the father not to. And so the next day, her little daughter wanted something, but she said no. So the little daughter started to cry. And the mother said, you can stop crying. It does not work with me. And the daughter, of course, stopped crying. She realized, oh, my mom cannot be manipulated. My mom means what she's saying. But it helps the children also to realize my parents are strong. They protect me. If I do something dangerous, they will say no. Because my parents can say no to me. And so the child again feels safe. And if I'm safe, I can be attached to my parents. Here is just a little list of similarities of children who are not experiencing the first or second cycle well, and they're very similar. They have no stamina. They have a tendency to resignation. They have a tendency to blame others very fast. They show fear. We heard that. Transition, fear, a lot of fear if they have a transition. Often very consumerist, give me. And they don't trust in their own abilities. And it leads to insecure, troubled attachment. And the child who is not attached, we will hear a bit about the brain, working from a damaged brain because of the non-attached, have 3 reactions. And I like these 3 animals because they really show us the 3 reactions well. Fight, flight, or freeze. The lion who will fight, he will attack the gazelle or the deer or whatever it is, who will run away, and the little squirrel who is frozen stiff in the face of of adversity. So this is just a little bit of theory, and now we want to give you some toolkit, some different things, and each one will share again from their experiences, from all they have learned. I hand over to Ronda.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to be speaking more in terms of different styles of attachment, but just to give you some background of basic things that we are important to remember all the time. I had worked in the Mary Ainsworth Clinic in Virginia, where we did evaluations of attachment and of attachment style. And one of the qualities of secure attachment is that the person is continually evaluating themselves and their relationships for attachment issues. And it's happening all the time inside the person's head in all of their interactions on an ongoing basis. So I want to just give you some very simple principles that you can implement in yourself, because attachment is all through life in every relationship, in every situation it's manifested. Very simple, quick brain model. Have any of you all seen the FIS model of the brain? But very simple, and all I'm going to focus on is that this represents, the wrist represents the unconscious processing. That's all of our heart rate, breathing, all of those things that are affected by attachment, or what I'm going to talk about next, what emotional state we're in, which is affected by attachment. The thumb represents the emotional midbrain that we have in common with all mammals also. That's why everybody loves pets and all, because they also have those same characteristics that we do. And then the fingers represent, and that's the midbrain is the subconscious brain. That's all our emotional processing, all of our relational processing, all the nonverbal processing, all of our habits, which are 95 to 99% of everything we do. So it's most of our brain. It's one or two connections from every part of our brain. It's the core. And that's what we're talking about today. The thinking part of the brain is represented by the fingers, even though it's a large part of the brain, and it's what humans have unique. It actually has very little effect on most of what happens, most of the time. So it's important to remember, and when we're emotionally aroused and feel fear, the mid part of the brain, guess what happens? This is basically disconnected. So that's why it doesn't work to be like, what were you thinking when you did this? It doesn't work because it's not connected. So just remember that as a brief model in terms of attachment. I like to simplify things because it really is that simple. The emotional part of the brain is basically alternating between states of love and fear. And it can change as often as 4 times a second. And in relationship to all kinds of stimuli, we're taking in hundreds of bits of stimuli all the time. And it's all processed through that midbrain. And it affects every part of our brain and our nervous system and our bodies. Just quickly monitor yourself. What would you give yourself as what state of arousal you're in? Cortisol is the hormone of anxiety, of arousal. I'm using it very generally. And we need to be somewhat aroused to be awake, to be alive. So it's normal. The problem with cortisol and anxiety or fear is if it doesn't come down. And for our children that we work with that have attachment issues, it either doesn't come down normally or it stays dissociated down all the time, both of which are a major problem in development and learning and in interaction. So just quickly, just give yourself a number of what you're at now. Ah! Did it change? Yes, of course. That's just how quickly and easily any little thing, sorry to do that to you, can change our state of arousal in our nervous system. Just to give you a quick, in terms of oxytocin, which is the hormone of connection, of attachment, it's that warm feeling that we have. This is a picture of my first grandchild, and my daughter's hands are around her. Just looking at this picture, I feel oxytocin. I don't know if you all do, but if you look at a picture of somebody you love, you can feel the oxytocin. And that's the hormone of connection, and that's what God has given us as the main way of soothing stress. And it's through attachment, in our state of attachment. The sad thing is that the less attached somebody is, the less receptors they have for oxytocin, and the less sensitivity they have to oxytocin. So they need, our son that we adopted at age 9 needed 10, 20, 100 times more to get the same oxytocin response. I tell families who are considering adoption, think of it as taking on 3 or 5 children when you're taking one child. And that gives you an idea of how much you're going to have to be putting out regularly. Sometimes it feels like 10 or 20. Just a quick thing for children who've been severely traumatized, and our son was severely traumatized. The prosecutor that had worked with his case said that he had the most trauma of any child she had ever worked with. Just to let you know that I lived with the results of that in my home, and which is very different than I had already worked with it for 25 years. So it's very different to live with that day in and day out. But when a child has only had human connection through abuse, and that happens for a lot of the kids that we receive into our homes, they actually associate human contact with fear. And there's actually a paired response. And just to realize that that can be really deeply ingrained in the nervous system. And obviously makes it very difficult. Not going to take time with oxytocin in general, but we know about positive things that give us that warm feeling. And you got a quick list of them there. But negative things do it too. When there's not attachment, when there's not secure attachment, then addictions, self-soothing, self-harm, negative self-soothing activities. Overeating is a simple one. We have more oxytocin receptors in our intestinal system than we do in our brain or any other part of our body. That's why we love to eat, and we get lots of good oxytocin here at this conference, don't we? Lots of good food. So self-harm and self-destructive activities also release oxytocin. Just to quickly say that the attachment style that we receive in the first 2 years of life affects every relationship, every circumstance, all through our lives, and even our relationship with God. And it affects resilience, our boundaries, our stress responses. Thankfully, it can change. There's 2 types of secure attachment. There's what we naturally received in the first 2 years of life, and there's what we develop through conscious awareness, as I talked about at the beginning, of working at our relationships continually, learning about loving and being loved continually, and being aware of that. And obviously, our relationship with God is the best resource that we have with that. 2 weeks of separation harms the security of attachment. I've worked with organizations and told them, please don't send parents who have children under age 2 somewhere for more than a week, even more than a few days. It's going to harm the attachment, and they shouldn't be out helping other people with attachment and trauma and causing attachment and trauma in their own families. I didn't start doing any training internationally till my children were all adults and independent. I grew up, my parents were missionaries, I was in a boarding school. I didn't want to do that to my children. We tend to all have the same style of attachment as our parents, or some combination of that. That's a normal thing that happens because the parents, unless they've really worked at secure attachment themselves, are going to naturally give what they learned. Sorry to do this very quick. You're going to have on your handout the 4 styles of attachment. I won't take time for them here, but I'll just give a few quick highlights. I don't want you to worry about this whole list here, but basically secure attachment is honest, real, and it's connected, and it's valuing relationships above anything else. And it's the appropriate level of independence and dependence. And remember those first 2 years of what Barbara had shared. There's variations then of insecure style. The first one is pushing toward too much independence. I've had many adoptive parents I've worked with who might have adopted a couple children, and they say, this one's wonderful, they never cry. I'm like, that's not good. Too independent. They don't ask for help when they need it. And the parents that are more comfortable with the child being independent and not needing them have this style. And you'll have some help with self-assessment of attachment style in the handout that you have, so we won't go into it in in depth at this point. The next insecure style is the opposite, too dependent. It's about what the parent needs. I had the opposites with my parents, and they had some secure attachment. So you can have mixtures in the clinic that I worked at. We would have all variations of people who are more completely one style or mixtures of styles, and that might be the case for you. And my mom tended toward this style of wanting, when I would call, both my parents are with the Lord, but she would tend to, when I called her, it would be more about her needs, even though I know she loved me and cared for me. It was hard for her to get off of what she needed. Even when I had cancer, was she going to be able to handle losing another child? My oldest brother died, and she was preparing herself to lose her daughter now, which was more about her than it was about me and what I needed. You see what I'm saying? I know she loved me, and my father was very independent, pushing toward independence. When we were in boarding school, he had pushed my mom to leave without saying goodbye because he thought it'd be easier for us and we wouldn't cry. That's too independent style. The last style is what a lot of the children that you work with that have had severe trauma will have, and it's basically there's no fixed style. The other styles are much more adaptive because at least you know how to relate to them. If your mom or dad are totally different each day, one day they're pushing toward way too much dependence, the next day they're pushing toward way too much independence, and you have no idea what mom or dad you have that day, that's incredibly confusing for a child. And these parents are the ones who tend to not protect their children, and they're the ones who tend to also be abusive or neglectful. Thankfully, they're a very small percentage of the population, but sadly, they cause a lot of damage. And they take a lot of, in the mental health profession, a lot of the resources in schools and in the communities, and a lot of the problems that are caused by this last group, even though they're a small percentage. Of course, we're all called to really cultivate secure attachment, which is agape love. It's God's idea. He created it. And just to highlight that our stress level and cortisol level is contagious, and our level of oxytocin and calm is contagious. They did a research study that they said at the beginning they measured people's stress level, cortisol at the beginning of a presentation. At the end of the presentation, they measured the stress level, the cortisol level of the presenter and the group, and it was exactly the same, where at the beginning of the presentation it was different. So that's how contagious we are in everything we do. And so the best thing we can do for secure attachment is to really work at feeling loved moment by moment ourselves, and then we basically exude that oxytocin to everybody around us in everything we do. Thank you.
Okay, one question. The first one that has a question. Okay? If not, Ronda is available afterwards. Okay, then I hand over to Karla.
Thank you, Rhonda. That was great information. So try to keep all of those things in mind as I share some of the stories that I'm going to share with you regarding my brood. Can't imagine life without these people. I have good feelings when I see that picture. Again, my name is Karla, and I am the mom of 6 children that were adopted through foster care in the United States, state of Michigan. And they came to us as 2 sibling groups of 3. They were very young when they came. The first 3 came with they were 3, 2, and 2 months old. And so they had only been in one foster family. Although a lot of damage had already been done as far as attachment and things of that nature. Our youngest 3 came to us at the age of 6, 5, and 3, and at that time we were their 6th home. And there was a lot of things that happened in their lives in that short period of time that we are seeing the results of today. And so I want to talk about some of those things to kind of help you understand how attachment works with children that have been through so much. So a lot of times, an old model of institutions and things of that nature was simply to keep children safe. you know, in the U.S. we have this saying, 3 hots and a cot. It basically means I'm feeding you, I give you shelter and clothing, maybe education, but not much more than that. And we know, if you're here at this conference, you have understood that children need much more than that. And so building relationships should be our very first goal. And that is going to help with attachment with the children that we have in our home or the children we're working with in different programs. Our number one goal is to be an agent of healing. And we can't do that unless we deal with anything that is keeping us from attaching, and allowing the children to develop those relationships with us. So you want to draw close even when they, push you away. We found out just by hearing the things that Rhonda talked about, you're going to have a lot of children that are going to push you away. They do want your attention. They do want to attach. Deep down inside, they want that relationship and that connection, but they find it very hard to trust based on life's experiences. What life has shown them, the world around them, the experiences that they have had say that I cannot trust anyone. And so it's very important that we don't take things personally when our children push us away when we're trying to draw close, but that we continue to have those lines of communication open, and that we continue to have that compassion and educate ourselves on how we can better attach, and then eventually allow the children to break down those walls that they've developed. But if we put up walls because we're offended that they're pushing us away, then it defeats the purpose of really being an agent of healing. I do training through several countries in Africa, several countries in Latin America, and throughout the U.S., and now in Asia. And one of the things that I have found kind of different depending upon what culture you are ministering to at the time or sharing with, that discipline strategies can be vastly different, you know, based on continent and culture. And one of the things that I try the hardest to get people to understand is the difference between discipline and punishment. And we know that discipline is discipleship, you know, which is a teaching moment, a connection moment. When you're teaching, you're connecting, you're developing relationship. And punishment is just that. I'm going to make you pay for what you did. And there's no connection there. There's no attachment there. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that we focus on is positive and creative discipline when it comes to our children, that we cannot take on the behaviors that remind them of the abuse that they have previously suffered and expect that we're going to be able to have a healthy attachment with the child. And one person may say, well, I'm just tapping him on his bottom, but that may remind him of a beating that he got every day before he was removed from his original family. So those are the kinds of things we have to think about, is that it is not parenting as usual. My husband calls it parenting on steroids. Because it's parenting plus. There's a lot of other things you have to keep in mind and understand and educate yourself on so that you can be the best version of Jesus to the children that you're trying to minister to in your home and outside of your home. And so know the difference between discipline and punishment, and always are on the side of discipline. Time in versus time out. When we adopted our first children, I must admit that I was not at all trauma competent. I just wanted to be a mom. I'm just being honest with you. And so we made a lot of mistakes out of ignorance. And, you know, when you know better, you do better. And we learned and we educated ourselves, and we, you know, a lot of light bulb moments went off and a lot of apologies had to take place. But we recognize that in a lot of the books, the parenting books that are usually geared toward biological parents, talk a lot about timeout, sending a child away to think about what they've done and come back and join the group when you're ready. Well, I want to give you a quick example. One of my sons, second to the youngest son, who is 12 now, when he came home, he was 5 years old. And at that time, the agency was afraid because they had been in 6 homes. There were 12 people involved in deciding whether or not we were the family for this sibling group of 3. He was their main concern because he exhibited the most severe behaviors out of all of them. Today, hardly any. But at that time, that's what he did. And when he came home, it was traumatic for all of us. You ever heard of secondary trauma? The caregiver's response to the trauma of the child. And when he came home, if you told him no, he would scream at the top of his lungs for an hour and a half. He would throw things, he would kick, he would punch, he would bite, he would punch holes in the wall. And we had never experienced anything like this. Even though all the rest of our children had, behaviors that were a result of their trauma, none of them experienced this. So myself, my husband, and our other children were really in shock about this response. And we thought we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. What the parenting books told us to do was to send him to his room and allow him to gather himself and then come back and join the group when he was ready. And we had no idea that what we were doing was causing him more trauma. We were his 6th home. The 6th set of parents that had committed to him were sending him away to deal with his problems on his own. That was not helping with attachment. Thankfully, we were bright enough to recognize it soon enough and not continue this practice. And one thing that we did the opposite. We began to pull him close every time he was having a difficult time. And when we had to say no, we changed the way that we were saying it. We changed the way we communicated with him. We would sit close to him. And we went from an hour and a half to 5 minutes. And I'm not saying, over 6 months or over a couple years' time, it was instant. That doesn't mean it will happen like that with every child. But with this particular child, he went from an hour and a half, complete, destroying everything in his path, to a relaxed situation. So now if I have to correct him, it's like, okay. If he's upset, he might shed a tear or he might pout for a moment, but he's learned how to regulate himself because he knows we care. We care about his emotions, how he feels about the situation, and we're always going to be close when he needs to process those things. So that's kind of a difference between time in and time out. And we don't realize, when we're trying typical methods with children, that they don't always work with our kids. So in order to do that, you want to definitely build trust. In order to build trust, you have to draw your children closer, not push them away, send them away. Examples of discipline that build attachment is the thing that you want to do is you want to bring calm to the situation. You don't want to basically do exactly what they're doing. So if they're screaming, you probably don't want to be screaming. if they are, completely losing all their marbles, you want to make sure that you are bringing calm to the situation. And I think that's what helped with our little guy, who now is very confident in his ability to come to mom and dad when he's happy, when he's sad, when he's mad, and that we'll be there, we'll be close, and we'll help him through that. And then listening intently. Sometimes we do more talking as parents than we do listening. And sometimes we don't have all the facts or all the situations. We haven't listened to what they're not saying, what they are saying. So just listening intently instead of jumping to judgment and immediately dishing out a punishment. Do not engage. Now, if a child, she was talking about the state that a child is in when they've completely lost it. You know what I mean? And they're not really there. And sometimes it's not the moment to try to reason. Okay? Have you ever been angry and someone tried to reason with you and you're like, step away from me? So imagine how our children feel. They have a harder time handling their feelings and their emotions than some, maybe an adult would. So we have to make sure that we don't engage and we don't step into that space, but we bring our calm into that space and we give them a chance to come down, be present with them, and allow them to connect. And then remain consistent. It's very important that you're not doing time out today and time in tomorrow and time out today, and then one day you do nothing because you're exhausted, if we're not consistent in our desire to attach with our children and the way that we're handling their behavior and things of that nature, they're not going to know how to be consistent in their response. And they're not going to know how to consistently regulate themselves or to attach to the people around them, because it's scary. For our children, a lot of times things have been uncertain, and they're scary when they're uncertain, and they can't, discern what's coming next. If they don't know how mom is going to handle a situation, because she always handles it differently, then it's pretty scary, and that will cause a rift in attachment. And so I want to hand it over to Sue that will give you, to Ronda.
Thank you, Karla. No, to Sue. Urgent question? If not, yes, it's Sue's turn.
You can see we have a lot of content to get through. We're like, stay on track, man, stay on track. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna try use the clicker. Okay, this is a little bit old. Actually, we have another one since then. Those are my sweet babies. Get them off. Okay, I'm going to be very, very practical because you've had some great theory here. I do want to say that this is the start. If you don't know anything about attachment, start here and dig now. Follow the rabbit trails, learn, get online. There's a lot of great learning online. Find the resources. I started just by adopting kids from hard places, and now I'm a training manager for a national organization. I don't quite know how that happened, but it did. But it was just start learning. Just go there. Read books, get online, type in specific words, and you'll get the stuff that you need, yeah? So I want to make it very practical. I'm all about the practical. I want to take something home that works, okay? Something that's going to help you the first day that you get home, hopefully. And some of this is just from things that we've done and things that we train. So I want to use 3 E's. I'm talking specifically about transitions for kids. And kids that are coming out of hard places that don't have good attachment, that don't have secure attachment, transitions are hard for them because they've had so many transitions. And it can be a transition from one space completely into another space, or it could be a transition from one school to another, or from one setting into another. So there are specific things that we can do to help them manage that. The first thing, of course, is being aware that that's going to be hard for them. Don't assume anything. Assume that you need to inform. Assume that you need to help the child with that transition. So the first thing is expectations, managing the child's, your own, and the community around them. Manage your own expectations. What are your expectations on your child and how your child is going to cope with that situation? Give them some slack. Don't expect that they're going to manage it the same as a child that's coming out of a healthy attachment, right? Manage their expectations. What are they expecting to happen? What do they think is about to happen? What are their thoughts about the change that's about to happen? And managing the community around them. And part of my section is becoming an advocate for your child and creating a circle of support around them. And part of that is informing the community around your child. Educate the community around your child. If it's a school teacher, if it's a healthcare worker, if it's a church, children's church worker, you may need to inform the circle, inform the community around your child to what they can do and what they can't do, and what may be difficult for them and what may not. That way we're addressing those expectations in that triangle. We're making it easier for that child to move from one space into another, and making it easier for everybody around them and everybody that's doing life with that child. We want to educate ourselves. I've put in bold there, learn your child, and I cannot emphasize that enough. I have 8 children that live permanently in my house, and we have like a revolving door for kids that don't live there all the time, but that come on a place of safety. But I have to learn my kids, and I'm still learning the 22-year-old. But you have to learn your kids. Things that will work for one child will not work for another child. Things that this child likes and prefers, I'm going to use those to engage with that little guy and attach with him, but it may not work for the other one. He may hate what this one loves. So you have to dig in and learn your child, learn their history, learn what have their experiences been, because that's going to feed into what you're dealing with in the here and now, right? You want to educate yourself. Track behaviors, investigate, research, keep learning. It's a journey. I think I put right at the end there, this is a marathon, not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is like, don't get into this stuff if you're not in this for the long haul, because this just takes time. Creating attachment and helping kids to attach and have secure attachment, healthy attachments. And I loved what you said, that you can develop a healthy attachment. You can learn that stuff. You can be intentional about learning that. And for us as the caregivers, and Karla was saying that we need to do our own work first. We need to dig down and become healthy ourselves so that we can help our kids to become healthy. So if we can develop healthy attachment, we can help our kids with that. But we have to investigate. You have to learn things. I'm constantly learning. I buy books. I constantly have new books coming because I'm constantly learning, because I want to know better so that I can do better for my children. Okay? Where am I? Okay, we're going to educate our kids about safety, about acceptable behavior, about life. And again, that's a journey. That's not a quick fix. You're not going to hand a child that does not have good attachment and healthy attachment, you're not going to hand them a manual and say, there you go, buddy. That's how we do it. This is like a lifetime thing. You're going to build attachment with him, engage with him, and we're going to do life together. And you're going to teach him about life as you do that. Right? So we're educating our child. We have to teach them what's safe. And very often they are anxious when they're making transitions. They're anxious about, am I going to be safe? Am I not going to be safe? I'll give you a quick example. We have a little guy from Afghanistan who is with a friend of mine, and he had been moved. He's not from Afghanistan. He's from Iran. And they moved him around about 3-4 different places and landed in Zimbabwe. And they picked up at the airport that he had false travel documents. So we're one of the few countries in the world, we bring people like that into the country. We incarcerate them and bring them into the country. My friend and I they placed him in this foster family, and we were doing a little outing, her family and my family, and we sort of loaded everybody into her van, and right before we got in, this little guy stopped my friend and he said, "Tonight, sleep here?" He was terrified, having been moved from here to here to here to here. It was like, okay, you're putting me in a car, what's coming next? Am I coming back here to sleep? Am I sleeping in this bed again, or is something else coming? So we have to educate our kids. We have to inform our kids, right? Tell them what's coming. And tell them that it's safe. And also tell them when it's unsafe. And we want to empower ourselves, our child, and we want to empower their circle. We want to empower the people around them, the people that are caring for them. We want to engage. I think this is really, really important, and probably the most important thing in terms of building attachment is being present. Being present, being in the moment with your kids. And I've put there play and enjoy, because I think as adults we're like, okay, how do we do this? Okay, I got to pick up this phone. I got to talk to Miss Karla. I got to read Miss Ronda's book. I got to get this thing done. I got to go to work. And actually, you cannot build attachment like that. You have to press pause. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. You have to engage. You have to play. You have to have fun with your kids, because that's where those connections get built. That's where they attach with you and they learn to trust you in those spaces. Not when you're going Mach 10 and trying to do the circus, which we're all doing. And we want to extend grace and compassion. Grace and compassion to yourself. Like, I am the only one who blows it every day. I know that. I know you all don't. I know this panel right here, they have nailed it down. I am the only one who makes this mistake every day. That's not true. We're all a hot mess, right? We're all a hot mess. We're all just trying to do the best that we can with the information that we have, and our hearts are in the right place, and we want to do good because we want the best for our kids. So extend mercy and grace to yourself. If you need to step back and do that. Press pause, take a breath. Go get a coffee, drink a glass of wine, whatever your thing is. Do that thing and take a breath. And extend that to your child. I'm doing a little research at the moment about compassion and what compassion, when we show compassion, what it does in the brain. It's really interesting. It actually triggers things that cause us to be courageous. It sets off courage within us when people show us compassion, when they show us mercy. And our kids need that from us. Okay. We're like speed talking through this thing, right? Okay, so I want to just give you 3 very simple tools that you can use. There's about 3,000 tools that you can use, but I have like 3 minutes, so 1 minute each maybe. So the first thing is that we want to give voice to our kids. Very often your children have not had a voice. They haven't been allowed to have a voice. Their voice has been silenced. So we want to give them a voice, and that helps us to build attachment with them, and that helps us to manage the transitions. So ask open questions. Don't say, how was it, did you have a good day? Yes, no, easy, no. That's not a good question. What was the best part about your day? What happened today that wasn't good? Was there anything about today that you don't want to happen tomorrow? You're opening it up. You're opening up the lines for communication. Listen to listen. Karla alluded to that. We listen to correct. We want to listen with our children. We want to validate their feelings. When they do communicate with you, when they do use your voice, don't poo-poo what they're telling you. Don't dismiss it. Validate what they're feeling, because for them it's very real. It might seem foolish to us, to them it's very real. So we want to validate their feelings. We want to give them permission. Children will only tell you what they feel they have permission to share. So we need to give them permission to tell their story. Give them permission to tell you how they're feeling. Give them permission to say, I just feel yuck, this is just horrible, I don't like this, I hate this, or I feel angry. But we have to create space that it gives them permission to speak. And I'm not going to say that again, be the safe, calm listener. If they've got a circus going on, don't become the center of attraction in that circus. You want to be the ringmaster and be able to manage the event, and bring everybody back down to calm. Okay? We're going to give choices. Choices is a very empowering thing for kids, and especially for kids when we're trying to build attachment with them, because they very often have never had choices. They've never been allowed to make any choices. Always give 2 good choices, like if you give a good and a bad, what do you think they're going to choose? Give them 2 good choices, but obviously you're going to be smart enough that both of those choices are going to be things that are positive and productive, yeah? We're going to do redos and compromises. These are very empowering things when we're building attachment with kids. Allow them to redo something when they make a mistake. If they blow it, give them another chance. Let them try it again. Teach them how to do a compromise. I don't want that. I hate that. Well, okay, how about if, and then you teach them how a compromise works. You're teaching them a life skill at the same time, and you're also teaching that, this is a person that I can work with. This is a person I can open up to, because she's going to give me something, but we're also balancing the nurture structure thing. Okay, nurture is we're bringing them close, we're loving them, we're doing the oxytocin thing, but they need the structure too, because that's what keeps them safe, and that creates a sense of safety. And we want to learn, control. We're going to give them a little bit of control, and that plays into the choices, because when they have control, that very often reduces the fear, that reduces the anxiety, and they're often living in that state of being completely triggered. They're living on high alert all the time. Their little brains are living in that state. They're struggling to bring those things down and to bring the adrenaline down, and all that hormone is pumping through their body. So sometimes giving them control through choice is a great way to empower them, and it builds connection and trust between you. Learn the power of yes and the power of no. Yes is a great word. And no is also a good word. Barbara alluded to that. I think Ronda did too. So finding the balance, yeah? And then I just wanted to touch on sensory, because sensory is really important in building attachment with kids. A lot of children that are coming out of hard places have sensory challenges. They have sensory issues. Educate yourself about sensory. On the training that we do, it's my favorite thing to do, because it can be life-changing for kids. If there is any kind of sensory issue going on and you can learn how to support them with that, those transitions become so much easier. For example, proprioceptive input comes through physical activity, through walking, through swimming, through running. It's a deep muscle thing, and it very often helps to regulate the brain and to bring people to calm, bring children to calm. I have been known to take a child to school with a 5 kg bag of sugar on his lap. It's a proprioceptive thing. It's a weighted thing, and that soothes him and that comforts him. And that transition from my space to the school space becomes easier. Or let them walk, take a walk to school. That's why playing before school is so important. It helps to make that transition into the classroom situation. Track their responses, learn your child's sensory profile. There's a lot, again, online that you can use to do that. Just very briefly, building a circle of support around the child, the big goal here is to have consistent care for your child so that your social worker is trauma informed and is informed about the space that the child is coming out of, the things that the child is struggling with. The judicial system, if there is legal workers involved with your child, that they understand, that the teachers understand, so that the care that you're giving in the home situation is being replicated and you have consistency for your child. That will make the transitions easier too. And having that support around the child will make life so much easier for them and for you. I've put the anchor there against the parent. So the parent is the anchor, and then the arrows are going both ways because we're the anchor for the child. And we want to make that circle around them small to start with and grow it very slowly. So you're building trust as you go and as you build that circle. But we want the child to be able to adventure out and come back to safe base. That's how it happens with toddlers, right? Baby can walk away, come back to mom, and it's the same for older kids. They may have to relearn how to do that, relearn how to trust people, but we're going to be the anchor. So you may need to inform the circle around them. You're going to inform people around them of what your child's needs are. You're also going to monitor that circle and make sure that that circle is safe for your kids. And then building felt safety. The two things that I think are critical is predictability and consistency. And Karla spoke a little bit about that. And it's building blocks, and building a building takes time. You have to just one brick at a time, and you keep doing it. So my predictabilities are informing your child, preparing them for transitions. You cannot over-inform. That little guy that was running down the street, we had a really tough time with that. And we went through times where I would have to sit in the classroom, and he would sit next to me. And he would give me permission of when to leave the room. And I would be like, can I go now? Nope. So we'd wait another 5 minutes. Honey, can I go now? Nope. And I'm like, I've got to go to work. I've got to get other kids sorted out. But I had to do the work in that space and inform him, this is how it's going to be. And you're going to do this. Then you're going to do this. This is how your day is going to look. Can I go now? Nope. And then I said, why don't you go and sit on the mat over there? Because they're going to read a story. And then he would go and sit on the mat. And then I would be like, and they'd be like, can I go? And then I would, but it was a time thing. We just had to take the time and do the work and build that foundation for him to now, he puts his backpack on, I'm like, who are your safe people? This is my safe person, this is my safe person, and everybody's like, I know my safe people, Mom. But you do it because I'm informing him. I'm keeping those blocks being built, preparing, having routine, structure and nurture, and then consistency. Just do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. Because felt safety reduces fear, creates trust, and it builds attachment.
Okay, last but not least, that's me. I am not married, and these are two of the young people in my life. My favorite nephew, now that would make him laugh because he's my only nephew. I have 6 nieces and 1 nephew, but he's really my favorite. And the other one is Sahil, an Indian boy that I know since he was a baby. He lived in the streets with his parents who died when he was 6. Then he was in a small children's boys' home. I kept touch with him, and now he is about to go to university, which I think it's wonderful. I'm so glad. I'm so happy and proud about him. And I want to talk a little bit about self-care because I think it is very important. Like I said, I have worked in India. I have worked with people, trained people who were running orphanages. And I had said to people, but you know, if you run an orphanage, you have to make a schedule, who is there when, and you need to give people off days. And they were like, oh, but if you're a parent, you don't have off days either, which I am not fully agreeing with either. But I said, but that's different. It's other people's children. It's not your children. So self-care, time off is part of self-care. I have two things, me and my team. It's either the team you're working with or as a couple, you're a team too. For me, one of the really important things is, how is my relationship with God? Am I safe with God? Do I find help with Him? Do I trust Him that He knows what I need, that He cares for me? Do I spend time with Him? Do I have time to spend time with Him? Can I take time to spend time with Him? Or am I so busy, like Sue was sharing, you know, how she's thinking, oh, I need to do this. And, but that's very, very important. The other thing that I think is really important is, am I reconciled with my own past and history? We heard about attachment styles. What is my attachment style? How am I attached? What did I experience? Am I at peace with what I have experienced? Or will children constantly trigger the hurts in my own life? So I think the first thing we need to work on before we really work with the children is my own life, my own healing, my own, you know, and that's where God comes in again, you know. My relationship with Him, my own healing of my past life. Also, do I have an emergency plan? What if I really need a break? Do I have someone who could step in? Do I have a family? And that's where I think here with World Without Orphans, bringing the church in, that's the best place to be. Do I have people in my church that I can share with and that could say, you really need a break. I come over, I take care of your kids for an afternoon or for a day or for a weekend, so you can take a break. You need it. Do I have them? Do I have so-called respite parents? People that step in and look after my kids to give me a break. Because if we can take a break, when we come back, we will be there 100% for the kids again. But if we are running on our last strength, we are not. And that's the question, can I involve the church? How can I involve the church in what I'm doing? And it starts with praying, and it ends up with having people who say, hey, I'm there for you. I can be a godmother or a godfather for your kids. I can take them. I can go to the zoo with one of your kids and spend an afternoon with them. The kids will enjoy it. I said my sister is a foster carer. That's one of the things I often did. They stayed with me for a weekend, or they stayed with me, I went to the zoo or whatever. And because I was there, they know me. They have an attachment to me too. And so it was easy for me to step in and say, hey, they can spend the weekend with me, or a day with me, or whatever. So I need that to be able to care for myself. And then the team, like I said, I've gone to orphanages and I realized, there was so much competition. Oh, I want the kids to love me. I want the kids to love me. No, of course they need to love me. And you can imagine that this is not working. So how is our relationship in the team? Are we friends, or are we a competition to each other? Do we get enough rest in the team? And also, do we have a sense of humor? Sometimes these kids, we have heard, and we all know, they're challenging. But can we take it with humor? And sometimes if we can take something with humor, it really relaxes the situation. And if we can do that as a team, it brings relaxation to the situation. So it's good if we have that. And so in a team to work together as friends, not as rivals, realizing that in a team we have different jobs. Somebody in a team might be the team cook and someone is the team leader, but we're all important. And so we need to pass that on to the team. It doesn't matter what you're doing in the team. You're important with what you are doing. We are one team or we are one family. I was sharing with a group of parents, not foster parents, just parents. And then the mother comes to me and says, "Oh, I'm trying to say no to my kids sometimes, but my husband always says yes. What could I do? Can you give me advice?" I said, "I'm sorry, no. The only advice I can give you is you and your husband need to be on the same page. I cannot give you any other advice." And the same here. In the team, you need to be on the same page. And if you are, working together is easy, but if the team tries to be rivals, the kids need to love me more than the other, it's not working. So, and also, like I said, if you're a team leader or the team leaders, they need to make sure that everyone in the team has days off, has times off to relax, to be refreshed, to get away. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I wanted to say about self-care. But don't forget, self-care is very important, very crucial. And only then the whole thing really works. Because if we are tired and at the end of the rope, we cannot help the children anymore. Good. So we have 5 more minutes. And now, if you have any questions to either something that we have said or something else that has to do with attachment. Okay.
So, how do you think we can
So the question is, how do we really inform the circle around the children, especially here talking about the school, what is helpful in informing the school about our children?
Yes, yeah, I think you can. Did you get my question?
Yeah, I think so. You're saying that sometimes they're too permissive with the kids, actually.
And sometimes they label them, or sometimes they
Yeah.
do not.
I think that's a common thing. I think, right, we have that happen in Zimbabwe as well. I think this is where being an advocate for children, you've got to advocate for your kids. One of the things that we did in the school that my kids go to, and it just happens that I happen to teach on trauma, we taught the whole staff. We had a staff training, and the whole staff in that school is now trauma informed. They've done modules 1, 2, and 3. So we're trying to create a culture in that school that is supportive not just of my kids, but of other kids, and kids that are different, or kids that look different or behave different. I'm not minimizing anything that you're dealing with, because I totally understand that. But I think, again, just informing, creating opportunities maybe. If you could create some kind of group thing, I don't know what you guys would think, but maybe a group thing where you can inform and speak from the perspective of where you are, you know, that what you're trying to do for the kids. Trying to get rid of social stigma that's around orphans is very hard. It's very, very hard. The system is very shaming to orphans, I think. We have a situation in Zimbabwe where we have a curriculum, a school curriculum, and the children from a certain home, Harare Children's Home, go to a school, and in that curriculum it talks about and orphans that live at Harare Children's Home. And the children from Harare's Children's Home are studying that curriculum. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy stuff. So I do understand that. That's a systemic thing, I think, as well. So, but for me, if I would break it down. I'd try and break it into a bite-sized piece and take it on one bite at a time. And maybe try and get them on board, try and win them over a little bit, and then use it. I'm sure you guys have got something.
I was just thinking about, with my son through the school and the community folks, to see it as a long-term thing that's going to help the children you're talking about, as well as children in general. That's an ongoing relationship that you're cultivating. And so, and the more I could go to school and be involved in school activities, whether it was eat lunch, which was permitted in our school, that you could go and eat lunch with the children, you could volunteer in the classroom. The more I could be there, then there were so many little opportunities, because obviously the teacher and whoever else is very sensitive also to not feeling like they're doing it right or correct. And so the more they just see you as a normal part of their lives on a regular basis, but I also saw it as a long-term thing. How could they know and get it right? You know what I mean? Without learning the child, as you talked about, on an ongoing basis.
I just want to say something very quickly about this. You have to determine who you're talking to and who needs what information. Yes. Number one, your children's story is their story. So everyone in the surrounding community should not know the children's history. So what does the teacher need to know? What do the neighbors need to know? You give them the basic information needed to possibly, okay, say this child is a runner and I need my neighbor to know, if I can't catch the child, can you help me catch the child? You know, but they don't need the child's entire history to be able to help you with that. And so you have to determine who needs what information and keep that child's story their story.